Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 8 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today we'll be covering mid lane Kassadin, the Voidwalker.
The balance of power must be preserved.
Kassadin is a champion that scales very well as the game progresses, and he has one of the best late games in all of League. He's got some very high burst damage and some high mobility, which gives him his really high snowball potential. He will be able to kill the enemy mid laner over and over again if he is snowballing, but he also can roam around the map with his high mobility and delete those laners instead. Finally, Kassadin is really strong in the mid lane against most AP champions. This is because his Q ability gives him a really nice shield that absorbs a lot of magic damage. This is very effective in trades, at least in most matchups. Kassadin of course has his fair share of cons like everybody else, and the first one is his very weak early game. He is very immobile and he doesn't have the greatest damage out there until he gets his ultimate. He becomes a lot stronger when he does acquire it, but those early levels can be pretty hard in a lot of matchups. Some of these hard counters would generally be AD champions like Talon or Zed that your spell shield is not that effective against. It won't mitigate any of their damage, and trading with them will be really hard for you. They're of course not by any margin unwinnable matchups, but they're a lot harder for you than the generic AP matchup. For your runes, you want to go for Precision and Domination, grabbing Fleet Footwork as your keystone. This will be very effective on Kassadin since he is technically a melee champion, and it will add a lot of sustain for you and some nice movement speed as well. You then want to follow up by getting Triumph so you get some extra gold and 12% of your missing health on takedowns, and then pick up Tenacity so your takedowns also grant you permanent tenacity. Then last, like usual, pick up Coup de Grace so you'll deal more damage to low health enemy champions. Then in that domination side, you want to go for Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. These are really nice because you will get some nice healing whenever you damage an enemy champion from Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter will make it so your takedowns grant you permanent healing from ability damage. When you combine these two runes with Fleet Footwork, you'll actually have some pretty nice sustain. Now as for your summoner spells, you'll first want to pick up Flash. Flash is a really solid summoner because it can be used in all sorts of different situations to save yourself if you do get caught in a bad position. You do already have your ultimate, which is some really nice mobility, but if stacked high it's going to cost a lot of mana, and of course you don't even have it before level 6. For my second summoner spell, I like to take Ignite for its added kill pressure, but Teleport is of course a great alternative. Ignite will just add a little bit of extra damage, increasing your kill threshold, and Teleport is great to move around the map, or to just get back to your lane if you do get shoved out. So now let's look at your abilities, starting with your passive, Voidstone. This is an innate ability that makes it so Kassadin is permanently ghosted and takes 15% reduced magic damage. So this is actually a fairly strong passive because when you are ghosted you cannot be blocked by minions, which is actually pretty nice for a melee champion. Then you do have that other part of the reduced magic damage, which is really nice in the mid lane as well, because for the majority of times you will be against an AP champion. This will make you just a little bit tankier, and surviving that early lane phase before you get your ultimate will be a little bit easier. Next, let's look at your Q, Null Sphere. When activated, you'll fire an orb of void energy at the target enemy, dealing magic damage and interrupting channeled abilities. This will also grant you a shield that exclusively absorbs magic damage for 1.5 seconds. So this here is a really nice ability because it gives you a form of range harassment, and it's also great in trades because of the shield that it also provides. You also want to keep in mind it is an interrupt, so if something like a Katarina ults on top of you, you will want to use the ability to silence them to cancel their ultimate. Basically, you will want to trade with this ability, but you can also last hit with minions if you do need to play safe, and also interrupt channels. Next here we've got your W, Nether Blade. Passively, this will make it so your basic attacks deal 20 plus 10% AP bonus magic damage. When activated, your next basic attack gains 50 bonus range, deals increased bonus magic damage, and restores mana with the amount quintupled against champions. It will also reset your basic attack timer. So this is another really strong ability because that passive will let you last hit a lot easier during the lane phase. It will do a lot more damage when activated, and you want to use it after you auto attack once because it will reset your auto attack timer and you'll pump out just a little bit more damage. It's not as good as your Q and your E, but you definitely want to point in it early on. Next is that E, Force Pulse. Passively, Kassadin gains a void energy stack each time he's nearby a champion, including himself, that uses an ability up to 6 times. Once he's at 6 stacks, he can activate Force Pulse. This will make him shoot out a cone of magic damage in front of him and slow enemies for 1 second. This here is a pretty strong ability because it will do some solid AoE damage, and the slow it provides is actually pretty decent as well. It does however require stacks before you can use it, but if you're against champions that spam a lot like a Yasuo or a Ryze, you can use it pretty damn often and output a lot of damage. It's a really strong ability, and usually you want to use it at the beginning of your combo because it will be a slow, and of course the rest of your abilities will apply stacks and you can use it again. And that brings us to our really strong ultimate, Rift Walk. When activated, after a small delay, Kassadin blinks to the target location, dealing magic damage to all nearby enemies upon arrival. Each Rift Walk within 15 seconds doubles its mana cost and increases its damage, stacking up to 4 times. So this ultimate has the potential to do an insane amount of damage, but it will cost a ton of mana, so you have to use it very carefully. When you are going for an all-in, you want to try to have a couple stacks just to increase that damage. It is, however, really strong still, even at 1 stack, because it's a great way to engage onto a champion, and you can always use it as a flash as well to escape. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then next, you want to focus on maxing either your Q ability or your E ability first. Against a generic AP champion, I'll always max my Q ability first just to help with trades, but if you are against a melee champion that spams abilities rather often like a Yasuo, E is definitely superior. In those situations where you also have to play a little bit more passively, I do take my W at level 1 as well. Either way, you will want to make sure your Q and your E are maxed first, and then max your W last. Like I said before, take a point in it early on just to help you in trades and last hitting. Kassadin has all sorts of different combos, but we're going to cover the 2 main all-ins. In this first combo, we jump onto them with our ultimate and instantly EQ auto attack, and then reset the auto attack timer with your W. This is going to allow you to jump onto an enemy, slow them and damage them with your E ability, and follow up the rest of your damage, pulling off a high damage combo. With a couple Rift Walk stacks, this can one-shot squishy targets. For this next combo, we first slow the enemy with our E ability and jump onto them with our ultimate, then auto attack, reset it with your W, auto attack again, and Q. This is another really strong combo that I use if I already am in a really close range, because you will get off your E at the beginning of the combo, allowing you to get off as many stacks as possible to regain it to use it again later. During the lane phase, farming is the first thing that's very important. You want to focus on getting as many last hits as possible with your auto attacks and the rest of your abilities if you have to use them. Now during that lane phase, of course trading is also pretty important. You'll want to try to poke the enemy champion with your Null Sphere and your Force Pulse. When you are going for an all-in, you want to make sure you add your stacked up Rift Walk if you can stack it beforehand, and then use your Nether Blade when you do need to reset your auto attack. Once you are level 6 and you have shoved the minion wave, roaming is something else that you should be focusing on. You'll have a ton of mobility with your Rift Walk, and it's really solid in ganks, so make sure you're roaming around the map and snowballing. Teamfighting on Kassadin is mostly about abusing the high mobility from your Rift Walk to get on top of the enemy team backline and delete a squishy. A fully stacked Rift Walk will do an insane amount of burst damage, but you have to be very careful about the mana cost because it goes up significantly with every stack. Once you do get onto that backline, quickly combo your Force Pulse for even more burst damage and a strong slow. Next, you can hit the enemy with your Null Sphere for even more damage and a shield, and then use your Nether Blade after you auto attack once for a reset and more burst. Once that target is killed, you can either jump to a new one or jump out and reset. Now let's look at a couple hard matchups, and first up is Ahri. She'll be pretty hard for you because she is stronger in the early game and she can definitely take advantage of that. Then at level 6, she's kinda just like you in the sense that she does have a flashing ultimate that'll also do damage. As long as she can land her charm ability and combo the rest of her abilities on top, she will have a lot of kill pressure on you, so you have to be very careful at all times. For the next hard matchup, I've got the Donger. He's incredibly annoying for Kassadin because he has an insane amount of early game pressure and it's really hard for a Kassadin to deal with. Even in the mid and late game, if he can land a grenade on you while you are in the middle of his turrets, he can do an insane amount of burst damage and potentially one-shot you, so be very careful when going into a Heimer because he has a lot of kill pressure. Next, we've got the first hard AD matchup, Talon. He's a really hard matchup for you because your magic damage shield is going to be pretty much useless against him, and he does do a lot of damage in melee range, and of course you are a melee champion, so he can trade pretty effectively. Therefore, you'll have to be pretty damn safe in the lane, especially before level 6, so try to just farm up, and if you need to, use your Q and your E to last hit. And for the other hard AD matchup, we've got Zed. This matchup's a lot like fighting a Talon, your shield's not going to be that effective, and he will do a lot of damage to you, especially in the early game. Therefore, just like against Talon, be very safe, use your Q and your E to last hit if you do need to, and once you are level 6, you may want to start roaming. Alright, now let's finish this off with the item build, which starts with a Corrupting Potion and a Warding Totem. There's all sorts of different starts you could go for, like a Doran's Shield or a Doran's Ring, or perhaps even a Dark Seal, but usually my favorite is to go for Corrupting Potion. You'll get a lot of extra sustain with that start, and it's really strong in those early trades. As for your core items, you want to go for a Rod of Ages, Seraph's Embrace, and a Zonia's Hourglass. You'll definitely want to pick up your tier before you go for the Rod of Ages. It will delay it by just a little bit, but it's worth it to get that tier stacking. Once you do get your Rod of Ages and your Archangel's Staff transforms into a Seraph's Embrace, you'll be a very, very tanky mid laner that still outputs a ton of damage. Of course, then you'll have that Zhonya's just to add a little bit more ability power, and you'll have a really solid defensive stasis that allows you to block all sorts of different damage that could be coming into you during a team fight. In between those core items, of course you will want to pick up your boots, and you have a bunch of different options. If you want to increase your damage, you can either get Sorcerer's Shoes for the magic penetration, or Ionian Boots for the cooldown reduction. Both are really solid offensive options, but in some you may need a defensive. You could pick up Merc Treads against high AP and CC heavy teams, or Ninja Tabis against high AD teams. All 4 boots are really solid options, and they work in different situations. Now as for your item pool, you first could get a Lichbane. This is a really solid item on Kassadin because he is all about bursting down a champion, and you will be in melee range when you jump onto them with your ultimate, so it has the potential to add a ton of damage and burst squishies. Of course, if you are going for the high AP assassin build, you could always pick up a Rabadon's Deathcap. Then, if you needed some magic penetration in the later stages of the game once the enemy does have some magic resist, you could always pick up the Void Staff. This will give you a nice chunk of extra magic penetration, and against the tankier teams, it will really increase your damage output. If the enemy team then has healing abusing champions like a Soraka or a Mundo, you could always go for Morellonomicon. It'll apply grievous wounds to targets and really increase your chances of bringing them down. Then for one defensive option, you could pick up Banshee's Veil. This will also increase your damage since it has ability power on it, but it also has a spell shield which is great at blocking things like a Fizz's ultimate if they struggle at getting on top of you. For the full build, we want to go for a Rod of Ages, then choose our boots, get the Seraph's Embrace followed by a Zhonya's Hourglass, and then get the Rabadon's Deathcap and a Void Staff. You'll do an insane amount of damage with the high ability power from this build, but you'll also be pretty defensive at the same time with the shield from the Seraph's Embrace and the stasis from Zhonya's. If you get to the late game with this full build, you are going to be insanely hard to deal with. And that's all I've got for Season 8 Kassadin. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure you like and subscribe and visit the video description below. I have a link to all my social medias, and I do also have a Discord server and a second channel that I upload daily to now, so those are some you should definitely check out. But other than that, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I really do appreciate it, so take it easy, have a good day, and peace.